behind a thrift store in Phoenix. People laughed at Nina's crooked trash tent until one hard desert wind tore it open and revealed the tiny world she had built for her daughter. Nobody outside had guessed what she was protecting in there, because nobody had looked closely enough. Before we go further, like and subscribe for more stories that look beyond the surface. Nobody noticed the tent the first day. It sat behind Martin's second chance, like something left there by accident, half hidden between the donation bins and the cinder block wall. By the second week, people had started giving it names. Another customer asked whether code enforcement had seen it yet. A man dropping off a cracked dresser pointed at the sagging blue tarp and laughed under his breath, saying it looked like a pile of laundry had given up on life. The name that stayed came from a boy in a red hoodie who stood near the loading dock with two friends and a phone held sideways. "Look," he said, zooming in on the uneven roofline, the shower curtain tied across the entrance, the coat sleeves knotted around the corners. Somebody built a house out of garbage. His friends laughed, and from inside the tent, Nina Cole stayed very still. She was 21, though exhaustion made her look older in certain light. And she had learned that answering strangers usually cost more energy than she could afford. Beside her, 3-year-old Lily was sitting cross-legged on a folded blanket, pressing a purple crayon so hard against cardboard that the tip had flattened. "Are they talking about us?" Lily whispered. Nina looked at the little girl's shoes lined up neatly by the entrance, toes pointed toward the flap like they were waiting for a real doorway. Then she reached over, turned the cardboard around, and said, "No, baby, they just haven't seen it from the inside." That was how Nina survived those first weeks. She never pretended the tent was enough, but she refused to let it become the only thing Lily saw. Because inside that crooked shelter, hidden behind a faded flowered sheet, Nina was building something no one outside had bothered to imagine. A clean sleeping corner, a few rescued books, letters cut from cereal boxes, a washing station made from plastic bottles, green onions growing in a cut jug, because Lily wanted something in the tent that was allowed to grow. And on the wall, tucked where strangers could not laugh at them, a growing line of small paper notes that all began the same way. Today we still had. 3 months later, when a desert wind ripped open one side of the tent and Mr. Martin stepped in, expecting to see the kind of mess people had been complaining about, he stopped with one hand still on the loose tarp. He had seen the outside every day. He had never understood what Nina was protecting inside. Nina had not always slept behind a thrift store. 6 months earlier, she and Lily had a narrow room in the back of Mrs. Bell's house on Juniper Street. It was not much, but it had a door Nina could lock from the inside, an outlet where she charged her phone at night, and enough space under the bed for Lily's plastic box of blocks, crayons, and 2 stuffed animals with missing tags. Nina worked mornings at a bakery supply kitchen, sealing muffin trays before sunrise. In the afternoons, she sorted donated clothes at Martin's Second Chance, checking pockets and matching shoes that had arrived in different bags. On bakery mornings, Lily stayed with Miss Carla in the church nursery. During Nina's afternoon shifts, Martin let Lily sit near the sorting table with crayons and a snack as long as she stayed away from the loading dock. Her schedule left almost no empty hours, but it worked. She could buy groceries on Wednesday, wash clothes on Friday, and read Lily 2 books before the little girl fell asleep against her arm. Then Mrs. Bell died quietly in her sleep, and the house changed hands faster than Nina could understand. Her son came from Mesa, walked through the rooms with a real estate agent, and told the renters they had 30 days. He was polite about it, which somehow made the notice feel even harder to fight. Nina searched for rooms during lunch breaks and bus transfers. Every listing asked for the same things: application fee, deposit, first month's rent, proof of income, 3 times the monthly amount. Sometimes a credit score she had never had time to build. She had money, just never enough in the same week. Enough for an application fee, but not a deposit. Enough for the bus, but not evening childcare. Enough for groceries, but not to miss a shift. By the last morning on Juniper Street, everything Nina and Lily could keep fit into 2 trash bags, 1 backpack, and Lily's plastic box of blocks. So the fall came in pieces. First a couch at a coworker's apartment, where Lily learned not to touch the glass coffee table. Then 3 nights in a church waiting room that smelled like floor cleaner and old hymnals. Then 2 nights in a car outside the bakery. Nina waking every hour to check whether Lily was still breathing easily and comfortable enough to sleep. By the time she asked Mr. Martin about the empty strip behind the store, she was not giving up. She was doing the math and finding no place left to stand. Nina's problem was not that she lacked willpower. It was that her life had no cushion, and when poor people have no cushion, even a polite 30-day notice can hit like a wrecking ball. Nina did not choose the strip behind Martin's second chance because it was hidden well. It was not. Anyone who drove around back with a bag of donations could see the blue tarp pressed against the block wall, the uneven roof line, the old shower curtain, moving whenever the wind slipped under it. She chose it because, after a week of borrowed couches, church waiting rooms, and sleeping upright in a co-worker's car, it was the least dangerous option she could still reach before dark. The bakery was one bus ride away if she left before sunrise. Martin's store was right there for her afternoon shift. The church on Palm Lane served breakfast 3 mornings a week, and the security light over the loading dock stayed on until dawn, washing the gravel in a weak yellow glow. For Nina, those details mattered. The volunteers there worried, but they also knew Nina was working, keeping Lily clean and waiting for housing help that moved too slowly. With a 3-year-old, shelter was not just a dry spot. It had to be near work, near help, and close enough to a bathroom that Lily would not have to cross 6 lanes of traffic. Still, the lot had dangers Nina could not ignore. There were broken glass pieces near the donation bins, rusted staples from old furniture, ants under the pallets, and delivery trucks that backed in too fast before 8 in the morning. Customers complained easily, too. Nina knew that before she asked Mr. Martin for permission. She stood by the rear door after closing, holding Lily's hand, and said she was not asking for money, clothes, or food. Just 14 days behind the fence. Martin looked at the child first, then at the lot, then at Nina's face, where pride and exhaustion were doing their best not to fight in public. He gave her rules. No fires, no mess, no blocking the trucks, no trouble with customers. Nina nodded to each one and added a rule he never heard. Lily could not feel punished for being poor. The 14 days were not permission to stay forever. They were only enough time for Nina to prove she would not turn the back lot into another problem. When the 2 weeks ended and the ground looked cleaner than before, Martin simply let the deadline slide 1 week at a time. That first evening, Nina did not decorate the tent. She cleared it. She picked glass from the gravel until her fingertips hurt, stacked stones into a boundary Lily was not allowed to cross, laid a torn rubber mat outside the entrance, and set both pairs of shoes there with the toes facing out. It was not home, but by midnight, it had a clean edge, a safe corner, and one small line between chaos and where her daughter would sleep. The first night behind Martin's second chance, Lily did not cry until the lights in the store went out. All evening, Lily had stayed unusually quiet, the way small children do when they sense adults are worried. She colored on a flattened cracker box. She whispered to her stuffed rabbit as if the rabbit needed more comfort than she did. But when the loading dock went dark and the only light left was the yellow security lamp outside the tarp, Lily looked up at the roof of the tent and saw every place where it sagged, every place where the fabric moved, every place where the night seemed close enough to touch. "Mommy," she asked, her voice smaller than usual, "is this outside or inside?" Nina had no answer ready for that. The honest answer was outside. They were sleeping in a tent over gravel behind a thrift store, separated from the alley by a tarp, 2 knots, and the fragile permission Mr. Martin had given her. But to a 3-year-old, outside meant no walls, no bedroom door, and no place where the dark had to stop. Nina pulled Lily closer and looked around at the crooked seams, the donation bags stacked near the fence, the strip of night showing beneath the tarp. Then she said, "It's our little inside for now." The next day, she started making that sentence true. At Martin's store, anything marked for disposal could be taken if someone asked first. And Nina always asked. She found a faded flowered sheet in the unsellable bin and clipped it across the back wall so Lily would not have to stare at blue plastic. She turned a shoebox upside down and made it a shelf for the flashlight. She wrapped the flashlight in a ashenal, a square of white packing paper, so the beam would not cut through the dark like a warning. She rolled an old coat into a backrest. From a torn birthday gift bag, She cut 12 crooked stars and taped them above the blanket. None of it cost money, only sleep. That night, Lily lay down, looked up, and counted the paper stars twice before closing her eyes. The tarp was still torn. The gravel was still hard. The lot was still the lot. But Lily was no longer staring at the damage. She was staring at something her mother had placed between her and the dark. By morning, Nina understood the next problem. Making the tent less frightening was only the first step. Keeping it from becoming what everyone called it would be harder. By the fifth morning, Nina understood that dirt did not arrive all at once. It came in quietly, grain by grain, on shoes, cuffs, and damp towels with no good place to dry. Behind a thrift store, disorder had a way of pretending to be normal. A half-eaten granola bar could bring ants by noon. A paper cup left outside would roll against the fence until someone saw it and decided the trash tent was exactly what they already believed it was. Nina could live with people being wrong about her. She could not let Lily start believing they were right, so she built a cleaning system small enough to fit inside one corner and strict enough to hold the line. The white grocery bag was for clean clothes only. The black trash bag was for laundry, tied shut even when it held only one pair of socks. Food went into a plastic container with a cracked red lid. Lily's face cloth was folded on the shoebox shelf, never used for feet. The foot cloth stayed by the entrance beside the rubber mat. The water came from gallon jugs. Nina refilled at the church in the morning, and, with Martin's permission, at the store sink during her shift. A small bottle of hand soap, thinned with water until it lasted twice as long, sat where Lily could reach it. They used the church restroom in the mornings, the thrift store bathroom during Nina's afternoon shift, and the gas station 2 blocks away on nights when nothing else was open. Every night, before Nina let herself lie down, she tied the trash bag closed and carried it to the dumpster, even if her legs ached from standing through 2 shifts. Then she wrote 5 rules on a strip of cardboard and taped it inside where Lily could see. Shoes outside, hands clean, food closed, blanket folded, no ugly words about ourselves. Lily could not read all of it yet, so Nina read it to her every morning in the same calm voice, as if those rules were not just about staying clean, but about staying human. Outside, people could call the tent anything they wanted. Inside, Nina made sure the blanket was folded, the shoes faced the door, and her daughter never heard her mother call their life garbage. A temporary place could still have standards, and a child sleeping in a tent over gravel could still learn that her name did not belong in the same sentence as trash. Nina first noticed Lily's silence around other children on a Tuesday afternoon while she was sorting children's shoes behind the store. A preschool group from the church across Palm Lane passed along the sidewalk, all bright backpacks and swinging lunch boxes, their teacher reminding them to stay in line. Lily stood near the fence and watched through the chain links. A month earlier, she would have waved. She would have asked somebody's name or announced that her stuffed rabbit could jump higher than anyone else's. That day, she only held the fence with both hands and tucked her chin down until the children were gone. Nina saw it then. Homelessness did not only take a roof, it took practice. Talking to other children, feeling invited, believing you belonged in the same world as kids with cubbies and snack time. So Nina gave Lily back a small piece of that world inside the only space she had. She washed bottle caps from the bakery and wrote numbers on them with a borrowed marker. Clean cereal box panels became picture cards. Sun, shoe, bus, book, moon. Broken donation boxes became an alphabet board, and a ball of red yarn became a clothesline for Lily's drawings. The books came from the damaged pile, the ones with bent covers and library stickers too old to scan. But Nina checked every page before bringing them in. A story could survive a torn spine as long as the ending was still there. Every night after the shoes were wiped and the blanket folded, they learned one letter. Nina did not teach A as apple. Apples cost money and bruised too fast in the heat. A was again, because they would try again tomorrow. B was brave, because brave did not mean unafraid. It meant washing your hands, standing up, and doing the next thing. C was clean, because clean was something they could control. D was dream, because even a tent needed one. When Lily asked about H, Nina paused longer than she meant to. Then she said, H is home. Home is where we take care of each other until we find a place with walls. Lily repeated it carefully, pressing one finger to the cardboard H. Outside, the lot still looked the same. Inside, Lily had a classroom, and Nina had found one more way to keep the world from shrinking around her daughter. The laughter did not stop just because Nina learned how to live around it. If anything, the cleaner the little tent area became, the more certain some people were that it should not exist at all. A woman dropping off 2 bags of winter coats told the cashier that the tent made the store look unsafe. Once, someone left a black trash bag beside Nina's entrance, even though the dumpster was 20 steps farther, as if the difference between a shelter and garbage depended only on where a stranger chose to drop something. Nina carried the bag to the dumpster without saying a word. She had learned that if she shouted back, people stopped hearing the insult and started remembering only her voice. But that night, after Lily finished tracing the letter D on cardboard, she sat very still with the purple crayon in her hand. "Mommy," she asked, not looking up, "are we trash too?" Nina felt the question land harder than any insult shouted from the lot. She could have said no quickly and told Lily people were wrong, but children do not always need speeches. Sometimes they need proof small enough to hold. Nina reached into the shoebox where she kept scrap paper, tore a clean corner from an old donation form, and wrote one sentence in careful letters. Today we still had clean socks. She showed it to Lily, then tucked it behind the flowered sheet where only they could see. The next night, after the church breakfast, they wrote another one. Today we still had pancakes. 2 days later, Lily chose the words herself. Today we still had a book with all the pages. After that, it became part of the evening routine, as necessary as tying the trash bag or folding the blanket. On hard nights, they wrote about warmth, songs, or the green onion growing taller. The notes became more than decoration. They were proof that shame had not taken everything. Nina was teaching Lily to count what remained because a hard day was not allowed to name their whole life. By the 6th week, Mr. Martin stopped pretending the complaints were only background noise. He heard them at the register, near the donation counter, from customers who lowered their voices just enough to sound polite and still be understood. The tent made the store look neglected. It might become a liability if someone got hurt on the property or make donors choose another thrift shop. None of them said Nina's name. They said the tent, as if the blue tarp had appeared by itself and brought a child with it by accident. Martin was not cruel, but he was tired, and tired people often reach for the simplest solution first. One evening, after closing, he found Nina rinsing Lily's face with water from a small bottle beside the loading dock. He told her carefully that he might have to ask her to leave soon. "Not tonight," he said. "Not without warning, but soon." Nina nodded once, and Martin braced himself for tears, anger, or begging. Instead, she looked past him at the back lot, at the hangers scattered near the donation bins, the cardboard softened by a leaking bag of clothes, the dust gathered in the delivery lane. Then she asked, "What would make this less of a problem for you?" Martin did not answer right away. It was not the question he expected from someone being told she might lose the last place she had. So Nina made a list before fear could close her throat. She could sweep the loading area before her bakery shift, collect loose hangers, stack empty boxes, separate wet donations before mildew ruined whole bags, and take the trash to the dumpster each morning, not just her own. Martin said he could not pay her for extra work off the books, and Nina told him she was not asking for that. She was not offering to replace paid employees. She was offering to keep the part of the lot she used clean enough for Martin to defend. The next morning, she woke at 5, folded the blanket, left Lily wrapped in the coat nest for 10 more minutes, and swept the rear entrance while the sky was still gray. 2 weeks later, the back lot looked better than it had in months. By the 3rd month, no one had officially changed the arrangement, but everyone had quietly adjusted to it. Nina kept sweeping, Lily kept tracing letters, and Martin kept telling himself he would decide what to do next week. Trucks backed in without crushing cardboard. Employees stopped staying late to clear donation piles. Martin still saw the tent when he looked outside, but it no longer looked like a problem without a person attached. It looked like Nina, up before sunrise, proving in the quietest way she knew that needing help did not mean she had nothing to give. The wind came just after 3, the way desert wind often does in Phoenix, without asking permission from anything light enough to move. It crossed the back lot in brown sheets, pushing dust under the delivery door and knocking empty hangers against the fence. Nina was inside the store, sorting a bin of children's shirts while Lily colored at the small table Martin let her use near the rear window. When the little girl looked up and said, "Mommy, our wall," one corner of the blue tarp had come loose. The knot Nina had tied through an old shoelace snapped free, and the wind pulled the side open just far enough for anyone near the loading dock to see inside. A customer dropping off lamps stopped first. "There's paper all over the inside of that thing," the customer said, not quietly. "Somebody should clean it up before it blows everywhere." "Mister." Martin heard the word clean and came out with the tired look of a man expecting one more complaint. Nina moved faster than him, crossing the lot with Lily tucked behind her, already reaching for the loose tarp. She expected embarrassment, maybe another lecture about why the arrangement could not continue. But before she could pull the flap closed, Martin caught the edge of the tarp and lifted it higher to find the broken tie. Then he looked in. The lot noise seemed to fall away for a moment. The space was smaller than he had imagined, narrow enough that everything inside had to earn its place. But it was not the mess people had described to him. The blanket was folded tight in the sleeping corner. Two pairs of shoes sat straight outside the rubber mat, Lily's tiny sneakers beside Nina's worn black work shoes. The books were stacked in shoe boxes with their torn spines facing out. The cardboard alphabet hung at Lily's eye level, some letters darker from being traced again and again. Bottle caps were sorted by color in the bottom of a cereal box. The hand soap sat near the entrance. In a cut plastic jug, a green onion leaned toward the light, and behind the flowered sheet, partly exposed by the wind, were the notes. Dozens of them, nearly 100. Martin read the first one closest to him. "Today we still had soap." A church volunteer standing beside Martin read another. "Today we still had one dry corner." Lily, suddenly proud, pointed to a yellow scrap near the top. "That one says we still had the letter H," she said. Nobody laughed. Customer who had complained about the papers looked down at the gravel. Martin kept holding the tarp, but his face had changed. He had seen the tent every day for weeks and thought he understood it. Now he saw what Nina had hidden there: work, care, routine, and a small system built from scraps so Lily could wake up with order instead of shame. The tent was still not safe enough for a child to live in for long, no matter how carefully Nina kept it. It was still not a home, but it was no longer possible to call it trash without admitting they had never really looked. Mr. Martin did not hand Nina a house key. Later, when people retold the story like he had rescued her in one sweeping gesture, Nina always corrected that part first. He made 3 phone calls, wrote 1 letter, and unlocked 1 storage room. It was not everything Nina needed, but it was the first help that arrived with a plan attached. The first call went to a mother's support group that had picked up donations from the thrift store twice a month for years. The second went to the church on Palm Lane, where a volunteer confirmed that Nina and Lily came for breakfast, helped wipe tables, and never caused trouble. The third went to the bakery kitchen, where Nina's supervisor wrote down her hours and added, without being asked, that Nina had missed fewer shifts than people with cars and apartments. Martin's letter was short. Nina worked consistently, kept the back lot cleaner than before, followed every rule, and cared for Lily with a level of order he had not understood until the wind opened the tent. While the support group gathered Nina's work letter, the church confirmation, and the housing intake forms, Martin let Nina and Lily sleep in the storage room behind the store. It was not cozy. It smelled like cardboard, old wood polish, and donated winter coats. But the door locked. The floor was flat. The light switch worked. For the first time in weeks, Nina did not have to listen for footsteps outside the tarp before closing her eyes. 11 days later, the mothers group found a transitional room on the west side, in a building with strict rules, thin walls, and 1 vacancy left by a family that had moved out that morning. The room had a metal bed frame, a narrow dresser, a small sink with a slow drip, and 1 window facing the parking lot. It was not beautiful. It was not permanent. But Lily walked inside and touched the mattress with both hands as if she needed to make sure it would not fold away in the wind. "Is this home?" she asked. Nina looked at the blank walls, the bare bulb, the place where their few bags sat on the floor. She thought of Mrs. Bell's room, the church waiting area, the car outside the bakery, the gravel behind Martin's store, and 99 notes hidden behind a flowered sheet. Then she said the truest thing she could. "It's closer." That night, after Lily fell asleep on a real mattress under a blanket that did not smell like dust, Nina took out one last scrap of paper. She had saved the 100th note for the day she could write it somewhere. Lily did not have to hide. Finally, Nina wrote, "Today we still had people who finally looked inside." She taped it above the dresser, not to hide it this time, but where Lily would see it in the morning. People had laughed at the tent because it was made from discarded things. They had seen the tarp, the shoelaces, the patched shower curtain, and thought they understood the whole story. But when they looked inside, they found what Nina had really built. Not a house. Not yet. She had built a rhythm, a clean corner, and a classroom made from cardboard. Most of all, she had built a way for Lily to count what was still good before the world could teach her to count only what was missing. If Nina's story moved you, like and subscribe for more stories about quiet strength in impossible places. Tell us which detail stayed with you most. The notes on the wall, the classroom in the tent, or the moment Mr. Martin finally looked inside. And let us know where you're watching from.